Tonight on Primetime, following weeks of Israeli and U.S. strikes on Iranian territory, attention is shifting from the battlefield to the civilian toll. International Committee of the Red Cross has arrived in Tehran, visiting damaged neighborhoods and medical facilities while meeting senior officials. The missiles may have stopped, but the reckoning has begun. Welcome to the program. I'm AnewZ. Iran says civilian areas, hospitals and schools were among the targets hit during the recent strikes and is now pressing international organizations to respond. As diplomacy intensifies, Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi is calling for wider condemnation and accountability over the broader regional and humanitarian impact. AnewZ's Tura Shiralilu brings us more from Tehran.
The president of the International Committee of the Red Cross, Mirjana Shpoliarich, visited Tehran for discussions on the urgent humanitarian concerns following the U.S.-Israel war on Iran, the ICRC office said. She met with Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, Deputy Foreign Minister for Legal Affairs Kazem Garibabadi, and President of the Iranian Red Crescent Society, Pir Hossein Kolivan, on Wednesday. The ICRC president also visited residential districts and medical centers in the capital Tehran destroyed by the U.S.-Israeli airstrikes. According to official sources, she praised the Iranian Red Crescent for its bravery and expressed deep regret over the loss of lives of citizens and bombing of civilian sites, including schools, hospitals, and residential areas. Foreign Minister Araghchi told the visiting ICRC chief that Iran expects international and humanitarian organizations to fulfill their legal and moral obligations in accordance with the Geneva Conventions of 1949 and condemn the killing of civilians. Also, Deputy Foreign Minister Garibabadi said that the U.S.-Israeli attacks on 130,000 civilian sites are examples of war crime, adding that international community failed to address appropriately these crimes on humanity. Meantime, Foreign Minister Araghchi held phone calls with his Indian, Polish, and Kenyan counterparts, as well as Speaker of Parliament of Lebanon, on bilateral ties and the latest regional developments. He called for global condemnation of U.S. blockade of Iran's southern ports, saying Washington and Tel Aviv must be held accountable for the security and economic consequences of their actions. Tura Shiralilu from Tehran for AnewZ.
Joining us now from Leipzig in Germany is Dr. Reza Talebi, an Iranian analyst, author, and journalist, to help us unpack the humanitarian, diplomatic, and legal fallout from the latest strikes on Iran and what this could mean for the region in the days ahead. Dr. Talebi, thank you so much for coming on Primetime. Now, the International Committee of the Red Cross has now visited Tehran and saw some of the damage firsthand. How significant would you say this visit is for Tehran, both symbolically and diplomatically?
This kind of visit is expected, especially in times of war in the period after conflict. Organizations like the Red Cross are supposed to come, assess the situation, and see the damage directly on the ground. But this should not be limited only to physical destruction. It is equally important to look at the humanitarian situation, how people are living, how civilians are affected, and whether their basic rights are being respected. At the same time, this kind of visit should not be just symbolic. It should not be that the kind of the symbolic terms, because this access needs to be continuous, transparent, and independent, so that the assessment is credible at the international level. In the case of Iran, the level of the destruction is already being described as very serious. Some estimates even suggest damage close to $270 billion. So if this visit are carried out properly, they can play a very important role both in documenting reality and in shaping international politic and humanitarian responses.
Well, during these strikes, the civilian infrastructure also got hit, and Iranian officials are calling all those strikes on civilian infrastructure potential war crimes. From a legal and political standpoint, how much of traction do you think that argument is getting right now internationally?
Attacks on civilian infrastructure have a direct and immediate impact on people's daily lives. When you target energy systems, water supply, electricity, you are not just damaging infrastructure, you are affecting the basic condition of life for ordinary people. From a legal perspective, such action can fall within the definition of war crimes. But the reality in the international system is more complicated. We are currently facing a situation where international law is not always applied consistently. At the same time, inside Iran, there are also serious limitations in terms of civil and human rights. Because of this, international reactions are often selective. The global focus is usually on consequences that directly affect other countries. For example, disruption in energy markets, but the combined impact of infrastructure destruction and internal social pressure on the population is not fully seen or addressed. They create a very dangerous situation, because when you combine economic pressure, infrastructure damage, and social restrictions, you are creating the condition for deeper poverty and increased social tension. And as we have seen in many conflicts around the world, in the end, it is people, not political actors, who pay the higher price.
When it comes to the global stage, we've been hearing that Iran's top diplomat has been holding calls with regional and international counterparts. Do you believe that Tehran is building some sort of a wider diplomatic coalition? And if so, what would be the end game here?
It seems that Tehran is trying to build a border diplomatic position and possibly a wider coalition. But this effort faces serious challenges. On one side, Iran still has a certain strategic advantage, especially in areas like energy routes and the Strait of Hormuz. But on the other side, its diplomatic relations, even with some close or traditionally friendly countries, have become more complicated and in some cases weaker over time. What we see now is a multi-layered strategy. We see Iran is trying to put pressure on European countries, mainly through energy concerns. And at the same time, it is trying to create deepen divisions between the United States and Israel. And in parallel, it is coordinating with partners like China and Russia to either open new paths for negotiation or simply gain time. But the key issue is, it is still not clear how long Tehran wants to continue this no war, no peace situation, such as the United States. At the moment, there is a certain level of uncertainty and even confusion in foreign policy decision making, and that uncertainty can reduce the effectiveness of these diplomatic efforts.
Well, speaking of pressure, Iran is accusing Washington of tightening restrictions on its southern ports. How much does that economic pressure complicate the humanitarian picture inside the country?
The main issue here is resilience. How long Iran can sustain this level of economic and maritime pressure. The southern ports of Iran are extremely important. They are the main channels for imports, export, and especially oil shipments. In the short time, it is possible that Tehran can manage the situation, but in the medium to long term, the pressure will accumulate. We are talking about rising inflation, shortage of basic goods, limitation on oil export, and even technical problems such as the reduced activity in oil fields or difficulties in fuel supply. All of this has a direct impact on everyday life. And when economic pressure increases, it quickly turns into social pressure. Given that the economic situation inside Iran is already fragile, this kind of external pressure can deepen social divisions and increase political tensions. If this situation continues, the combinations of external pressure and internal challenges could push the country into much more serious and complex crisis.
And Dr. Talebi, in that vein, in the long term, does this moment push Iran towards de-escalation, perhaps, through diplomacy, or could it harden positions and deepen the standoff?
What we are seeing right now is that these attacks have actually tempered more radical and hardline narratives inside Iran. Instead of creating space for de-escalation, they have increased the influence of security-focused actors and made the environment more resistant to negotiation. If economic pressure continues and diplomatic channels become weaker, there is a real possibility that the situation could move again toward escalation and even renewed conflict. This is not only about external pressure. Internal political dynamics also play a key role. At the moment, there is no clear consensus inside Iran on how to approach negotiation. At the same time, there is also uncertainty on the other side, which makes the situation even more unstable. Another critical issue here is Israel. Even if tension with the United States are managed, the question remains, what happens with Israel? The part of conflict is still unsolved. And without clarity on that, it is very difficult to achieve a stable diplomatic outcome. So overall, given the economic pressure, internal challenge, and the ongoing regional tensions, the risk of further escalation, at least in the short term, appears higher than the chances of successful diplomacy.
Dr. Talebi, thank you so much for coming on Primetime and sharing your insight and analysis. All right, after the break, we will be taking a closer look at the growing political rift between Baku and Brussels and what Azerbaijan's parliamentary break with Europe could mean next. Don't go away.
The global defense industry plays a vital role in ensuring national security. In Turkey, companies in this sector strengthen domestic production and enhance military independence.
ISA-based radar, Murat radar. This is fully digital radar. This is new for world. Aselsan today, Turkish technology leader and global technology provider.
Gökdeniz atışı hazır. 3, 2, 1, ateş. Hedef imha edildi.
I'm Nuray Mustafa. This is One on One.
As America sleeps, Europe is waking, and the East has begun its day. AnewZ is right here at the center, bringing you the latest stories as they break. I'm Nadia Jani, here with you each weekday morning to share latest world news and the stories shaping our region. Across all platforms and wherever you get your news, we explore the context behind the big headlines. Live from Baku, I bring you a diverse mix of regional and international news, sport and politics for you, an audience that wants a bit more. So join me Monday to Friday for the latest headlines, expert analysis and live updates from around the world. Around the globe and live from Baku, this is Daybreak here on AnewZ.
Welcome back, you're watching Primetime. Azerbaijan has decided to suspend its parliamentary cooperation with the European Parliament, according to a resolution adopted by the Milli Majlis at a plenary session on Friday. Now, the decision halts all areas of engagement between Azerbaijan's parliament and the European Parliament, including participation in the EU-Azerbaijan Parliamentary Cooperation Committee. Under the resolution, Azerbaijan will also initiate procedures to end its membership in the Euronest Parliamentary Assembly. During this process, the Milli Majlis delegation will not take part in Euronest activities. The assistant to the president of Azerbaijan has strongly criticized the European Parliament's latest resolution. Hikmet Hajiev called it a diplomatic disgrace and warned that it could undermine ongoing peace efforts with Armenia. He made the comments during a visit to Hankendi with foreign diplomats. Here's what he had to say.
First, it should be noted that the decisions adopted by the European Parliament have no significance for the Republic of Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan has no obligations towards this institution. Second, the European Parliament, as an institution, does not have a mandate to express positions on such matters. It must be clearly stated, who gave the European Union's parliamentary body the authority to speak about regions or countries outside the EU and comment on their issues in this way? Therefore, this decision has no importance for us. But what does it show? The Republic of Azerbaijan is taking serious steps to ensure lasting peace and security in the region. As you can see, within the Armenia-Azerbaijan normalization process, steps are being taken towards building the economic benefits of peace, and Azerbaijan is contributing significantly to energy security. Despite this, just one day after the visit of the Deputy Prime Minister of Azerbaijan to Armenia, the European Union adopted what can be described as a disgraceful resolution. Those in the European Parliament must understand that they are directly hindering the peace process. Their actions can be seen as destructive, provocative, and as steps that could drag the region back into war and tension. At a time when both Armenia and Azerbaijan are taking steps in line with the spirit of the decisions adopted at the Washington summit, the initiative remains with Azerbaijan, which is advancing the peace agenda. However, it is regrettable that such steps are being taken by the European Parliament. These positions are driven by certain political groups with Azerbaijanophobic and Islamophobic views.
Joining us now from Baku is Ulvia Zulfikar to help us unpack Azerbaijan's decision to suspend parliamentary cooperation with the European Parliament, what's behind this growing political rift, and whether trust between Baku and Brussels can be restored. Ulvia, welcome. Thank you so much for coming on Primetime. Now, Azerbaijan has suspended parliamentary cooperation with the European Parliament. Does this point to a deeper breakdown in the trust between Baku and Brussels?
Hello, good evening. Yes, over the past years, Azerbaijan has repeatedly expressed concern that the European Parliament has moved away from being a neutral platform for dialogue and has instead adopted a politically biased and often confrontational stance. And the latest resolution targeting Azerbaijan is as yet another example of this trend. And it reflects a pattern where complex regional realities are simplified, legal processes are politicized, and narratives are shaped in a way that undermines Azerbaijan's sovereignty and territorial integrity. For instance, the characterization of individuals detained under Azerbaijani law as hostages is seen as a clear distortion of facts and an interference in internal judicial matters. It's important to underline that this crisis is not necessarily with all European countries or even the European Union as a whole, and Azerbaijan continues to maintain constructive bilateral relations with many EU member states. However, the European Parliament as an institution is increasingly perceived in Baku as acting under the influence of lobbying groups and ideological agendas rather than objective analysis. So therefore, the suspension of cooperation signals that trust has indeed been damaged at an institutional level, and Azerbaijan is effectively saying that dialogue cannot continue in its current form if it is based on prejudice rather than partnership.
Well, Baku has long argued that certain European institutions apply a double standard regarding Azerbaijan. Would you say this latest move came as a result of years of accumulated frustration?
Yes, this step can be clearly interpreted as the result of accumulated frustration over many years. And Azerbaijan has consistently pointed out what it sees as selective approaches and double standards in how the European Parliament addresses issues related to the South Caucasus. And for nearly 3 decades during the Armenian occupation of Azerbaijani territories, the European Parliament did not demonstrate the same level of activism or urgency. The destruction of cities, displacements of hundreds of thousands of Azerbaijanis, and widespread humanitarian consequences did not receive proportional attention or strong political condemnation. However, once Azerbaijan restored its territorial integrity, the tone and intensity of criticism from the European Parliament increased significantly. And this contrast forms the core of Azerbaijan's argument about double standards, and its legitimate actions grounded in international law are often portrayed negatively, while violations committed against Azerbaijan in the past were largely overlooked or insufficiently addressed. And moreover, recent resolutions have included elements that Azerbaijan views as not only biased but also politically motivated. And they often rely on narratives promoted by certain interest groups and fail to reflect the broader regional context or Azerbaijan's security concerns. So these resolutions are seen as part of a continuing pattern of prejudice rather than isolated incidents. In this sense, the current decision is not sudden. It's the culmination of a long period of dissatisfaction and perceived injustice.
And with stepping away from the Euronest Parliamentary Assembly, would you say Azerbaijan is closing a diplomatic door or perhaps resetting the terms of engagement?
So Azerbaijan's move should be understood not as closing a diplomatic door, but rather as redefining the framework of engagement. Official Baku is signaling that cooperation cannot continue under conditions where one side consistently adopts accusatory and biased positions. Euronest was originally designed as a platform for dialogue, mutual understanding, and parliamentary cooperation between the EU and Eastern Partnership countries. However, this platform has gradually lost its balance and objectivity, particularly under the influence of the European Parliament's political line. And by stepping away, Azerbaijan is emphasizing that dialogue must be based on equality, mutual respect, and recognition of sovereignty. and the current format no longer meets this criteria. This can therefore be seen as a strategic recalibration, and Azerbaijan is effectively saying that it's open to cooperation, but not to unilateral criticism or politically motivated pressure. It's attempting to shift the relationship from one of perceived asymmetry to one of balanced partnership. And in diplomatic terms, I could say this is less about isolation and more about asserting agency. Azerbaijan is demonstrating that it's prepared to set its own conditions for engagement rather than passively accepting framework which is unfair.
Well, Azerbaijan remains strategically important for Europe's regional connectivity and energy security. Would you say that maybe gives Baku the confidence to push back politically?
Yes, Azerbaijan's growing strategic importance undeniably plays a role in shaping its more confident political posture. Over recent years, Azerbaijan has emerged as a key partner for Europe in energy security, particularly in the context of diversification away from traditional suppliers. The Southern Gas Corridor, along with agreements to increase gas supplies to Europe, has strengthened Azerbaijan's position as a reliable and essential energy partner. At the same time, Azerbaijan is also a critical link in regional connectivity projects, including the Middle Corridor, which connects Europe to Asia. So, genuine partnership should be reflected not only in economic cooperation, but also in political attitudes. It questions the logic of being treated as a strategic partner in energy while simultaneously being subjected to politically biased criticism in parliamentary structures. However, it's important to note that Azerbaijan's position is not based solely on leverage. Rather, it's rooted in the principle that partnerships should be consistent and mutually respectful across all dimensions: economic, political, and diplomatic. In this sense, Azerbaijan's pushback is not simply about power, but about coherence in international relations. It's calling for a relationship where strategic cooperation is matched by political fairness.
And finally, Olivia, what would you say that Europe needs to change, perhaps, in its approach to rebuild trust and a partnership with Azerbaijan?
Restoring trust will require a shift in approach, particularly within the European Parliament. The first and most important step is to abandon one-sided and politically charged resolutions that do not reflect the reality on the ground. And Europe needs to adopt a more balanced and fact-based approach, taking into account Azerbaijan's legitimate concerns, its legal framework, and the post-conflict realities in the region. This includes respecting Azerbaijan's sovereignty and avoiding language or actions that could be interpreted as interference in internal affairs. Secondly, it's important to differentiate between the positions of the European Parliament and the broader European Union. Many EU member states maintain constructive and pragmatic relations with Azerbaijan, and this positive dynamic could serve as a foundation for rebuilding trust. Europe should focus on supporting long-term stability and cooperation in the South Caucasus rather than contributing to tensions through politicized narratives. And Azerbaijan has repeatedly emphasized its commitment to peace and regional development, and it expects its partners to engage with it on that basis. And yes, a constructive relationship can be rebuilt, but only if it is grounded in mutual respect, equality, and a genuine willingness to move beyond double standards.
Indeed, Olivia. Thank you kindly for joining us on Primetime and sharing your thoughts.
Thank you for having me on your show.
All right, after a short break, we will be taking a closer look at whether Hungary's frozen EU billions are finally set to flow and whether Brussels' conditions are reform or pressure. Don't go away.
world business, we meet the boardroom leaders making market-moving decisions. And find out how leaders are dealing with continuous technological disruption.
As America sleeps, Europe is waking, and the East has begun its day. AnewZ is right here at the center, bringing you the latest stories as they break. I'm Nadia Jani, here with you each weekday morning to share latest world news and the stories shaping our region. Across all platforms and wherever you get your news, we explore the context behind the big headlines. Live from Baku, I bring you a diverse mix of regional and international news, sport and politics for you, an audience that wants a bit more. So join me Monday to Friday for the latest headlines, expert analysis and live updates from around the world. Around the globe and live from Baku, this is Daybreak here on AnewZ.
Welcome back. You're watching Primetime. Hungary may be on the verge of unlocking billions of euros in frozen European Union funds after years of political deadlock with Brussels. With a new government incoming and fresh reform talks underway, the question now is whether Budapest can meet the conditions in time or lose access to part of the money for good. For years, Brussels withheld billions in funding from Hungary over concerns about judicial independence, corruption safeguards, and democratic standards under outgoing Prime Minister Viktor Orbán. But now, with Prime Minister-elect Péter Magyar opening talks with Ursula von der Leyen, there are signs the standoff could be easing. Around 17 billion euros remain frozen, but time is tight. Some of those funds face an August deadline, meaning if reforms are not approved soon, Hungary could lose a portion of the money permanently. For Budapest, it's a major economic lifeline. For Brussels, it's a test of whether political change can deliver institutional reform. Joining us now from Budapest is András Varga, an assistant professor at Ludovika University of Public Service, to help us unpack whether Hungary is finally on the verge of unlocking billions in frozen EU funding and what that could mean for the economy, the government, and Budapest's future relationship with Brussels. Professor Varga, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us here on Primetime. Now, after years of political deadlock with Brussels, are we witnessing a genuine breakthrough, or is it too early to tell?
Good evening, and thank you very much for having me. If you're extremely honest, there is definitely a breakthrough. Under the aspect of the last few years of negotiation, which were mostly unsuccessful, the events of the last 2 weeks were actually extremely important under the aspect that the Prime Minister-elect and the President of the European Commission and her staff were actually conducting very successful negotiations under several aspects, and we can actually hope for the unfreezing these EU funds.
The European Commission says that all of this is tied to rule of law standards. Now, some in Hungary would argue that this withholding of funds is being used as political leverage. Would you say that this is some sort of legitimate oversight or a form of political pressure?
Well, if I'm extremely honest, everything which was asked by the European Union are commitments and obligations that we already have taken when we signed the accession treaties. So under several aspects, this is not really political pressuring. And if we're analyzing all of the steps that the European Union made in front of Hungary, they were quite patient, if I'm extremely honest about that, because the funds were actually frozen like 4 years ago. However, the different issues and problems with the rule of law were actually coming up to the surface very much earlier than that date. So under several aspects, we have to admit that it's not really a clear political pressure. On the other hand, though, we have to mention that obviously the whole mechanism that has been elaborated was elaborated to trying to bring Hungary back to those commitments that we have already taken.
And Professor, in practical terms, what does this money mean for Hungary's economy?
Well, pretty much everything. I mean, I don't know how familiar are you with the Hungarian economical data, but in the last 2 years, but even in the last 3 years, we were kind of struggling. The problem is that those EU funds were not only used to, covering EU projects, but their multiplicator effect, their multiplicator impact actually brought the Hungarian economy on, and those were the reasons why actually Hungary was able to develop. And since 2022, when at the end of 2022, when most of the funds were actually frozen, the Hungarian economy started to struggle, and unfortunately, most of our data are among the worst among the other member states. So I have to be extremely honest, we desperately need those funds.
Well, Magyar is yet to take the oath and assume office, but he did say that he will look to reset ties with the European Union. How much political capital would you say is riding on unlocking these funds?
Well, Magyar plays very well his cards. And he's actually very clear about that. Obviously, the EU can expect a much more proactive and constructive relation with the incoming Magyar government. However, there are different elements, there are different issues, there are different policy measures where the situation and the position of Magyar will not be very much different than the previous government, like the refugee issue or like the common agricultural policy. So those are going to be kind of the same. And also regarding the accession of Ukraine, the position is not going to change in absolute manners. However, in relative manners, the position will be much better than in the case of the previous government. And if we are extremely honest, the European Commission and the President of the European Commission is definitely familiar with these elements and with these manners because they are in a continuous negotiation.
And Professor, finally, in the long term, if the money starts flowing again, do you expect that to mark the actual reset in the ties between the European Union and Hungary? And do you think that there may be some leftover trust issues?
According to my understanding, the European Union's leaders are quite frankly familiar with the issue that under given policies, the Magyar government is not going to be way much different than the Orbán government. However, it's obvious that most of the issues and the general attitude of the incoming government will be a much more proactive and much more constructive. However, under the aspect of the values the government is still a conservative government, but a much more pro-European government. So I guess that the Magyar government will be much successful under the aspect of negotiation. They are not going to vetoing and blocking everything which is related to the identity issues. However, they are going to be tough negotiators towards the European Union. But, which is really important to underline, that the European Union doesn't really expect subordinates from any of its member states. They are just expecting clear and coherent negotiation, and that's the thing, that's the approach that the incoming government is going to deliver.
Professor Varga, thank you so much for joining us on Primetime and offering your insight.
Thank you very much for having me, and have a very nice 1st of May.
All right, after a short break, we'll take a closer look at Britain's rising security concerns and what the move to a severe terror threat level means for the country. Stay with us.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
Welcome to AnewZ, unfiltered news and analysis from the region and beyond. From Washington to Beijing, Tehran to Kabul, to Tbilisi to Tashkent. Hello, I'm J-Dad. Challenges.
Today is the third.
We're with you 24/7, taking you live to the front lines of the day's biggest stories.
Welcome to Gabala. One important note to fear. I'm here.
Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Hello, we are recording on the 8th of November.
Reporting from Paris,
Dar es Salaam, Tel Aviv,
Washington,
London,
Moscow,
Kyiv, Berlin,
Rio de Janeiro, Beijing, Bangkok, Tbilisi, Tashkent, Almaty, Kazakhstan, Port Sudan, Tehran, Islamabad, Istanbul,
Kabul for AnewZ.
Welcome back. You're watching Primetime. The United Kingdom has raised the terrorism threat level from substantial to severe. It follows the stabbing of 2 Jewish men in North London on Wednesday. Now, this means that a terrorist attack is considered highly likely in the next 6 months. The head of counter-terrorism policing said authorities were working against an unpredictable global situation with consequences closer to home, including physical threats by state-linked actors.
So firstly, I would like to say to the Jewish community, I completely understand just how frightened and how worried you are by the events of the past few months, and that is wholly unacceptable. We have seen a rise in anti-Semitism in the UK, and that is why policing is mobilised. It's why security partners and the government are putting the extra measures in place to try and combat that. But of course, we understand the impact it has on Jewish communities, and I'm doing everything with my teams in our power to ensure that they are safe.
All right, joining us now from North Yorkshire is Andy Preston. He joins us to look at Britain's decision to raise its terror threat level to severe, what it says about the wider security picture, and what it means for communities and public life. Andy, welcome. Great to have you on the program. Now, when Britain raises the threat level to severe, just how concerned would you say security services are?
They're clearly very concerned, and what they're looking at, of course, is not just the incident in London 2 days ago where a man who's a member of a group linked to Iran attacked some Jewish people. They're looking at a much bigger picture which relates to Islamist terrorism potential in the UK. It relates to far right, if you like, British nationalist terrorism in the UK, but it also looks at the potential action of foreign states and what they might be up to, either inspiring terror or directly bringing it here. So everybody was very alarmed, and in particular, you can understand the Jewish community feel very, very vulnerable at the moment. But something that I'd like to share with you and your viewers is that the murder rate, the homicide rate in the UK is relatively low. We have a homicide rate which is about 1/5 or 1/6 even of what it is in the USA. It's lower than France. It's about the same as Germany, but it's lower than Finland, it's lower than Belgium, it's lower than Sweden. So I would like to make sure that your viewers understand that although the threat of terror has been raised, coming just a day or two after an incident of stabbings in London, the murder rate historically remains very low.
Well, the police are warning of a broader threat. How should the public in Britain understand that?
It's very difficult because when people see this headline, they naturally become very scared. I mean, some people become too scared to go out that weekend or that week, and people stay at home. Of course, it reflects a broader picture. And these days, the risk of a terrorist incident happening in the next 6 months is something we should all be very careful of, very mindful. But we mustn't let it interrupt our daily activities, because a terrorist incident can be a stabbing in 6 months, which is catastrophic for the people and the family involved. But in the context of a nation's crime rates and in the context of a nation's economic and social activity, it's relatively small. Or it could be something infinitely bigger. So it's something that we have to be really careful of. And it would be very helpful if, when the authorities are pushing out the increase in risk of terrorism, saying it's severe, looking very likely, that they gave some kind of guidance. People need reassurance. We need to be aware of the risks. We need to be aware that we should be more careful. But we need to be reminded that life here remains relatively safe compared to many other countries in the West, and that the risk to life is still very small.
And particularly for the Jewish community after this incident, which is the latest in a string of incidents we've seen, does something like this deepen already existing fears on security and safety?
Yes, for the Jewish community, this is a really destabilizing time. A community that has felt vulnerable for several years now, but month on month, their fears and sensitivities and perhaps the reality of risks are increasing all the time. There is an increasingly hostile element against Israel and sadly against Jews in the UK that is growing here and is festering, and it's creating a culture of fear, it's creating a culture of distrust, and even level-headed, sensible Jews that live in the UK here are going on national TV and explaining just how it feels to know that there are people out there that want to do you harm, explaining just how it feels to go to a restaurant and feel vulnerable. So this is a big issue, and I understand actually that the number of applications from British Jews to go and live in Israel has doubled over the last year or two. So that tells you a story, doesn't it?
Indeed it does. And now with the counter-terror police saying that some new unpredictable threat may occur, including state-linked actors. If such a state-linked threat is there, does that make it harder to identify and prevent that threat?
Yes, it makes it very, very difficult. Britain is an ethnically and culturally diverse country. It's become much more diverse in the last 20 years, and identifying potential sources of trouble, whether it's from homebred right-wing troublemakers, or whether it's Islamists, or whether it's others, it's very difficult. And what's happening in London right now with the Jewish community is they're understandably frightened. They're demanding more security and safety and help. But it's a very difficult thing for the government, for the police, and for the security services to specifically do. Other than having huge numbers of police patrolling the streets, it's a very difficult thing to do. So the number of potentially bad actors is huge. You know, we have a population of 70 million with very large percentages of people from different cultures and ethnicities. So it's very difficult to actually solve this, and it's very easy for people to come here or stay here and want to act in bad faith and go under the radar.
And finally, Andy, how can the country strike a balance between public vigilance and keeping the day-to-day life as normal as possible?
That's a great question, because, you know, we started out by talking about that, and that the homicide rate here remains very low, as I say, below France, below Belgium, below Sweden, Finland, and way behind the States. So statistically, people are much, much safer here, but they feel vulnerable and they feel under threat, especially Jewish people. And how do we make people feel okay about going to the shops and going to the restaurant? There are Jews who live in, say, North London that are scared to go into the centre of London because of the protests that go on. And I don't have the answer to that. And it's very difficult. And I do think that the announcement of increasing the status yesterday to severe, implying that there will be a terrorist incident in the next 6 months, that has really scared people. It's made anxieties worse. It's made fears worse. Some of the fear is rational and some of the fear is irrational. And it's going to hinder people's lives and mental well-being. And I'm afraid I don't have a good answer for you, but that's something that the government and the authorities have to get right, which is getting people to be careful and mindful, but living their normal lives.
Andy, thank you kindly for joining us on Primetime and sharing your thoughts. All right, after the break, we will be taking a closer look at allegations of political lobbying, influence campaigns, and the battle over shaping Azerbaijan's international image. Stay with us.
On World Business, we meet the boardroom leaders making market-moving decisions. And find out how leaders are dealing with continuous technological disruption.
The global defense industry plays a vital role in ensuring national security. In Turkey, companies in this sector strengthen domestic production and enhance military independence.
ISA-based radar, Murat radar. This is fully digital radar. This is new for world. Aselsan today, Turkish technology leader and global technology provider.
hazır. 3, 2, 1, ateş. Hedef imha edildi.
I'm Nuray Mustafa. This is One on One.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
Welcome back. You're watching Primetime. Questions are emerging over political lobbying, influence campaigns, and attempts to shape international narratives around Azerbaijan and the wider South Caucasus. My colleague Guy Shone spoke with Anastasia Lavrina, host of Inside Politics and Frontline, to examine the allegations, the political networks behind them, and what the fallout could mean for regional diplomacy. Here's the full conversation.
Who is this man, Ocampo, and why does his involvement in a story like this carry so much political weight?
Well, there is indeed too much noise around his name, and there are indeed some facts which is proving that. Luis Moreno Ocampo, he played a role during the Argentina's democratic transitions. That's why since the beginning he made his name, which helped me, and which helped him actually to use his own name during the time while he was the first chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court from 2003 until 2012. And during that period of time, he became well known in the political circles, in the business circles, and also in the criminal circles. He had contacts with many people around the world, but it may seem that he tried to position himself as a very strict person within this very important institution, promoting human rights, working with different policymakers, former policymakers. But after some period of time, after investigations, it became known that he also has some contacts with criminals. Specifically, I would like to mention the case in Libya, where after the investigations, it was detected that he supported one representative of the militia group who had close ties with Gaddafi and Gaddafi's son. But it's not only about this, but he helped that person to hide his own, let's say, criminal past and the cases where he was involved in, receiving indeed a very good money for that period of time, providing the information to the people who were not supposed to have that kind of information. And after the investigation, of course, the people started to ask for more information about this person, and absolutely it was detected that he also were connected with a businessman and the people supporting them with the offshore business, from where he could also receive a good amount of money. Mentioning the numbers, even I could find it from the open sources that he was paid around $1 million per year for 3 years and approximately $5,000 per day.
Wow.
So he opened his own company, and having his name, which he promoted during the period of time taking that position in the International Criminal Court, he of course were surrounded by high-level policymakers who tried to use his name to promote their own interests. Let's say the people from the opposition, the people who wanted to have any kind of policy-making decisions, they asked him to publish any kind of documents or the books on behalf of his own name as it's the right position to be presented. But indeed, after the investigation, it was detected that most of the information was actually fabricated, and there was no any legal background. Among the people who indeed supported him, it's many representatives of the Armenian lobby in many countries, including a well-known figure, Ruben Vardanyan. It's a former Russian businessman. And from the open sources, I also could watch the video, the interview where the presenter, the host, is asking about his contacts, Luis Moreno Ocampo's contacts with Armenian diaspora, and where he's saying that Armenian diaspora, I will quote it, is a unique, and for him it's a great honor and pleasure to work with Armenian diaspora. And from the video which was presented by Meanwhile Politica, it's also it's also visible that he is presenting his contacts with the Armenian diaspora and lobby groups in the United States. And all of this happening during the period of time when we can see the intensification of the contacts in between of Azerbaijan, European Union, also Azerbaijan and the United States. So we can also we can also make the correlation in between what's happening in the region and the growing interest on behalf of the European Union towards the South Caucasus, and the willingness of some representatives of the Armenian diaspora to stop, to interrupt this peace-building process in between of Armenia and Azerbaijan. Connection with Vardanyan. Previously, he had a good context with former presidents of Armenia who were absolutely against any kind of talks and peace agreement to be signed with Azerbaijan. Then now he's also trying to position himself as a voice of those policymakers and Armenian diaspora who are willing to present the position and to support any kind of campaign, let's say the campaign around Ruben Vardanyan. Again, officially and openly, he made several statements in support of this criminal person who is now in Azerbaijani prison, and there is indeed number of issues he was doing while he was illegally staying in Karabakh. He is a self-declared policymaker, and we could see how Luis Moreno Ocampo tried to support him from any possible means from the high tribunes, social media, and etc. And here in this video, he's also saying that I have a company and I am ready to promote the interest of those who agree to pay good money, meaning that he's using his own name. He is using his former position, and he is selling his, let's say, his open sources and his company for those who are ready to pay to affect the peace-building process in between of Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Yeah, and I think that a casual glance at the video, perhaps from some viewers, Anastasia, you could be forgiven for thinking, oh, well, look, this happens a lot. It's an influential person. They've been caught in a situation where they're bragging, they're talking up their credentials in order to solicit some kind of consultancy fee. I mean, it happens quite often. It's embarrassing, but not really anything too serious. But actually, that's not what we saw here, is it? Because there are much more serious elements to this. The attempt to deliberately and purposefully influence Europe's position on Baku, for example.
Absolutely, and he also mentions the names. He named the people, Mr. Borrell, who, from his words, is a, let's say, close person to him and who helps him to promote his own interests. He also referred to the European Commission, bringing the case from which we can expect, from his words, that there could be any, let's say, problems in relations between the European Commission and Azerbaijan. So he's bringing the human rights and the international law, and he tries to hide the corruption under democratic principles, under the principles of democracy. He's trying to speak about human rights, again, about the democratic issues, about human rights violations in a number of countries, but it means that he tries to use it in order to hide its own corruptional schemes. As in the beginning, he is saying that I have a company and I'm ready to get the money and promote the interest of those who will be fighting against the peace building principles in the region. Yes. Meaning that he himself is trying to hide what he is doing, and it's him himself who is violating the international laws, the democratic principles, the human rights violations, and also the European value. We see now from his statement, he is mentioning that there is a number of people in the European institutions who will be working with him against Azerbaijan. Remember, we had a similar campaign before COP29 when Azerbaijan was positioned as a country with a good amount of fossil fuels. So how Azerbaijan can organize an event like COP29 if this country is well known with its own amount of gas and oil. We had such kind of statements on behalf of the Armenian lobby, Armenian diaspora, and the policymakers who have a good connections with the Armenian diaspora in between of those period of times, like last 3 or 4 months before COP29. And now, as I mentioned before, when there is a real chance for two sides, Azerbaijan and European Union, to have a stable, good relations based on new realities in the region. The new agreement, two sides are continuing negotiating on that. The process, the negotiation process started in 2017. Then imagine how many years passed. And now we have a new round of talks expecting that new agreement to be signed in between the European Union and Azerbaijan, also having more updated information about energy cooperation, about the peace in the region of the South Caucasus, restore territorial integrity and sovereignty of Azerbaijan. And within this period of time, we can see that there is a Luis Moreno Ocampo who is appear on the stage and stating that I will use my own sources and my own people. By the way, mentioning that Mr. Borrell is someone who will follow all of my requests, meaning that he tries to devaluate the values of the European Union institutions. Imagine the European Union, how many countries are there, how many representatives, how many institutions. I guess he preferred to appellate the situation in the European Parliament with one reason, because there is over 700 members of European Parliament. And I do remember that in 2023 I had my own investigation about the influence of the Armenian diaspora and Armenian lobby group in the European Parliament. That time I mentioned several names, the policymakers, specifically representatives of the Armenian diaspora, who is playing their own game, paying a huge amount of money for the members of European Parliament and promoting their own interest against Azerbaijan, bringing to the table different kind of resolutions, appealing by different resolutions and human rights violation cases and etc., trying to position Azerbaijan as not a right partner for the European Union. Therefore, now I guess we also have to expect that all of these issues are connected with the growing role of Azerbaijan and the fact that Azerbaijan indeed managed to have stable and good and predictable relations with a number of countries. Just recently, President Volodymyr Zelensky visited Gabala, Azerbaijan. Yes. So the Ukrainian leader is coming here and presenting Azerbaijan as a possible platform for a meeting between Russia and Ukraine. Imagine the status Azerbaijan has on the global arena. Then after Prime Minister of the Czech Republic is coming here, the President of Latvia, if I'm not mistaken, be here just before. So Azerbaijan is also trying to promote the bilateral relations with each and every country in the European Union and positioning itself as a stable partner for European Union from the energy perspective in the region. Absolutely, we have to expect that the people like Luis Moreno Ocampo and those who are in the circle of Ruben Vardanyan or the Armenian-American Council, ANCA, which is also very well known for its Azerbaijani messages, rhetoric, and publications. All of these institutions will try to use this situation for their own purposes. And the upcoming elections in Armenia, they also tried not to allow Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan to be re-elected, to have a strong position in Armenia, so they can bring their own person who will not be willing to have a stable and peaceful relations with Azerbaijan.
Ocampo, like Vardanyan, clearly it's very clear what they're up to. Ocampo made it very clear in the video that we saw in his own words. But they're not acting alone, are they? They can't be acting entirely alone. What about those European institutions? Do you think they also have questions to answer?
Absolutely. They should have a clear investigation after this video became available for so many people, because they are, I still believe, people and the policymakers in the European institutions who are willing to have a stable, predictable and constructive relations with Azerbaijan. But we cannot ignore the fact that they are still representative of the Armenian diaspora and the Armenian lobby who do not want to see this constructive and the final peace agreement, comprehensive peace agreement to be signed between Baku and Yerevan. From this perspective, I do believe that the representatives of a number of European institutions should have at least a clear and detailed investigations why it's happening, to make sure that the people who are now beyond the border of the European politics, like Mr. Borrell, he is not a, let's say, strong figure taking into account his current position. He already not a representative of a European institution. Therefore, these people will be used by the Luis Moreno Ocampo or the circles. We also, AnewZ made a very nice investigations mentioning a number of people in the European politics, and not only in Europe but also in the United Kingdom or in the United States of America, those who are willing to destabilize the situation. Remember, in the Parliament of the United Kingdom, there were also a number of session meetings held in support of the so-called Nagorno-Karabakh, as they prefer to state it. Until now, the violation, so-called violation of human rights and etc., they were trying to, they created the petition and asked people to join it. It's happened 2 or 3 months before about so-called destruction of the Armenian cultural heritage in the Karabakh, but they don't want to investigate. They don't want to come here and see what's indeed happened during the period of occupation of Azerbaijani lands by Armenia within almost 30 years, when a number of mosques, churches and other cultural heritage were absolutely destroyed. We do have all of these photos, but unfortunately they do not want to refer to the documents, to these photos, to promote them, to investigate the real cases. They prefer to ignore this side of Azerbaijan, meaning that they are not following the principles of the international law and human rights. They are trying just to promote their own position. The same person, Luis Moreno Ocampo, in 2023, if I'm not mistaken, published so-called conclusion on so-called genocide in Karabakh. He was referring to the action which took place on the Lachian Road, eco-activists there, and then that special operation Azerbaijan had within just 1 day, which helped to restore the sovereignty in the country. And Luis Moreno Ocampo, in order to have such kind of concept, he could come to the region himself to investigate what is happening. Without the clear investigation on the ground, he cannot publish any proven document or source to be distributed, meaning that even after that case, when it was published, the people started to ask who exactly provided the material for that, who supported that investigation, and there was no any clear answer. Meaning that those people, again, I mean the high-level officials and people with good money, paid him and used his name to promote their own interest, having that small reference, small conclusion to appeal in different international institutions without the proven facts and results.
Anastasia, it's always good to have you with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Fresh footage is adding a new dimension to the case of the former prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, Luis Moreno Ocampo. It involves efforts to influence and lobby EU institutions regarding Azerbaijan and Armenia. Here's the latest.
Azerbaijani outlet Minval Politika has released additional video material. It says further details the alleged networks behind the Ocampo case, presenting it as an expansion of earlier claims of a coordinated pressure campaign involving lobbying networks, political actors, and external funding. According to the publication, the footage includes remarks attributed to former International Criminal Court prosecutor Luis Moreno Ocampo, referring to funding linked to Armenian and Russian-Armenian sources, as well as discussions around campaign coordination and legal actions. The material suggests the existence of financial backing for what is described as a broader advocacy effort, including references to social media campaigns, international legal proceedings, and work initially carried out pro bono.
Dominic. Yeah. I can give you the name. I never remember the last names. I'm sorry.
But this is somebody who you hired. Devesa. I got some money
from Armenians.
Yeah.
So Armenians Trains in the U.S. No, money from Armenia to Russia. Los tipos viajan para afuera, tienen interés en otro lado, pero tienen interés en algunos, no todos, pero te diría que eso es confidencial.
At the beginning I did pro bono. The first report was pro bono. Then I get support from American Foundation to support a case before the ICC. Then I did also almost pro bono the social media campaign, and now there are a group of Russian Armenians who are getting a fund to finance the most sustainable campaign.
So how long will your project last?
No idea. Because now, in the Armenian case, there are a group of people who are financing this, and we have a commitment to make after this stuff. But what I'm doing is...
Also the military, no, group who is funding the...
There are some rich Armenians.
Why they are doing?
Because they are Armenian. Because they are Armenian.
They are part of the government or they are NGOs?
People like me, you know what they did in Russia.
The outlet says the videos are authentic, although the claims and content have not been independently verified, and no official response has been issued by those mentioned.
After the break, we'll check in with our correspondents around the globe. Do stay with us.
The global defense industry plays a vital role in ensuring national security. In Turkey, companies in this sector strengthen domestic production and enhance military independence.
ISA-based radar, Murat radar. This is fully digital radar. This is new for world. Aselsan today, Turkish technology leader and global technology provider.
Yaptığınız atışa hazır. 3, 2, 1, ateş. Hedef imha edildi.
I'm Nuray Mustafa. This is One on One.
As America sleeps, Europe is waking, and the East has begun its day. AnewZ is right here at the center, bringing you the latest stories as they break. I'm Nadia Jani, here with you each weekday morning to share latest world news and the stories shaping our region. Across all platforms and wherever you get your news, we explore the context behind the big headlines. Live from Baku, I bring you a diverse mix of regional and international news, sport and politics for you, an audience that wants a bit more. So join me Monday to Friday for the latest headlines, expert analysis and live updates from around the world. Around the globe and live from Baku, this is Daybreak here on AnewZ.
Welcome back to Primetime. The European Union is moving forward with the Mercosur trade deal to strengthen economic ties with South America. The agreement aims to cut tariffs and expand trade, but it remains politically controversial within Europe. Anita Sharma has the details.
Welcome to This Day in Europe as the EU presses ahead today with provisional application of its long-negotiated Mercosur trade deal. This as Brussels tries to shore up its economy in a more volatile global trade environment. The agreement, more than 25 years in the making, would cut tariffs on most trade between the EU and Brazil, Argentina, Paraguay, and Uruguay. Supporters say it could give European exporters better access to major South American American market while helping the bloc diversify supply chains and reduce dependence on China for some critical raw materials. But the deal remains deeply controversial, especially here in France. Farmers and environmental groups warn it could expose the European market to cheaper imports of beef, sugar, and poultry, putting pressure on local producers while raising concerns over deforestation in the Amazon. For critics, the agreement goes too far in the name of competitiveness. The political fight is not over. The European Parliament referred the deal to the EU's top court, delaying full approval, even as the European Commission pushes ahead with provisional implementation. That means key parts could start to apply before the legal and political battles are fully resolved. Economists say the overall economic impact will likely be limited. One assessment puts the long-term boost to EU GDP at around 0.05%. A reminder that while this deal is symbolically important, its immediate economic effect may be modest. Brussels is also looking beyond Mercosur, pushing to deepen trade ties with countries including India and Australia, as Europe seeks to adapt to an increasingly fragmented and competitive global economy. For AnewZ, I'm Anita Sharma, reporting from Arromanches-les-Bains in Normandy, France.
Baku is hosting an international youth forum focused on the post-colonial era. Young leaders from 17 countries are coming together to share their perspectives and explore future cooperation. Chimnaz Shahlar brings us this report.
An international youth forum titled Empowering the Role of the Youth in the Post-Colonial Era is now underway in Baku, bringing together participants from across the globe. The forum gathers young diplomats and representatives of young organizations from both current and former colonies. Delegates from 17 countries are taking part, sharing their experiences while engaging in discussions on some of the most pressing global challenges.
The opening ceremony of Forum, organised by Baku Initiative Group, starts with flash mob performances by young participants. Young representatives from different countries write their messages on a large board, sharing their ideas and aspirations. The event continues with speeches and presentations addressing key political and social issues. Participants say the discussions are both timely and necessary, as many regions continue to face the long-term consequences of colonial policies. They also highlight the importance of youth-driven dialogue and international cooperation.
We just look forward to acquiring valuable knowledge, skills that will help us to make critical thinkings, innovation, bring impactful solutions upon the development of our countries.
Especially in the area of technology, education.
I'm actually also Guinean, as I said, and I am also French. And as I said during my my speech, I am like the product of this history, see? And I mean, I think that the fact that youth are expressing themselves about a past history is something very interesting for them to maybe manage by themselves what they are expecting from the future and also from the international organizations.
Organisers say the forum is part of broader efforts to keep these issues on the international agenda and expand global engagement.
Since 2023, we have been supporting those engaged in the legitimate struggle against colonialism. We are also actively working across international platforms to promote human rights. This International Youth Forum, held today in our capital, represents a new segment of the Baku Initiative Group's activities.
The forum concludes with the decision to establish a Global South youth platform aimed at strengthening cooperation among young leaders.
From heritage to high-value global trade, carpets are redefining their place in the modern world. In Baku, experts and artists are coming together to explore how tradition can evolve through innovation and collaboration. Our correspondent, Narchik Jahangirli, has more.
What if I told you that the carpets that we all cherish as cultural artifacts are actually competitive modern products in global markets? Bear with me, because we are in the very place where tradition drives the initiative behind the most up-to-date ideas. A forum about carpets? It turns out there is a strong demand for this highly profitable commercial product. For the second consecutive time, Baku hosted the International Carpet Forum within the framework of the International Carpet Festival. It opened with a comprehensive discussion on the challenges facing the carpet industry.
Because what is important during the forum is exchanges of information, update to each other what's going on around the world with the art of carpet weaving, because this tradition lives in many countries. And this year the theme of the forum is about the business and art, because cultural heritage is one thing, but making art of carpet weaving in 21st century is an important thing.
The forum brought together leading experts, industry representatives and key figures from the cultural sector from around the world to foster a forward-looking dialogue on the future of carpet weaving. We heard many innovative ideas and unique points of view.
I'm working a very rare technique of Nuna silk. It's a mix of wool and silk, and I'm artist working worldwide, so I'm doing wall hangings and textile painting, mainly.
I am participating here with samples of sculptures I created from ceramics. In this work, I mainly focus on decorative applied art that is presenting Azerbaijani carpets in a new form and style. There are 4 pieces here, and they differ in its ornaments.
I've seen previous festivals, and it's just incredible that how this culture of carpets is embedded in the normal life of cultural in Azerbaijan and the region. And having here a small taste of what we have in Mexico is an example of how this culture developed.
As the industry develops, senior researchers are constantly seeking new partnerships and ways to bring traditional methods into global markets. Officials from Morocco and Italy are especially looking forward to these connections.
We are discussing at this level, and there is definitely a lot of things that we can share and do together in different fields for promoting this handicrafts, supporting, helping artisans, and trying to do common bridge between the 2 sectors.
The art textiles is not from Italy or from Azerbaijan. It's something mixed. The nations mixed every cultures, and something from Europe, I'm sure, arrived here in Caucasus, in Azerbaijan, everywhere, and something from Orient came to Europe. Italy. You know, as always, in every field of art, we are very interested since 1,000 years.
Baku's historical part, İçeri Şehir, takes over from the forum and is fully prepared to host the colorful festival over the next 2 days.
We have different pavilions, and the whole city, the whole inner city, actually covered into the carpet. Our team is entirely ready, and next 2 days will be the real holiday, the carpet holiday, in all around the whole city of Baku.
This marks Baku's 3rd time hosting the International Carpet Festival, making it the only city in the world with its own annual event of this kind.
A large international delegation is touring Karabakh and eastern Zangezur to assess reconstruction efforts. Leila Rahimli has more.
Today, on May 1st, a significant 2-day diplomatic mission is underway here in Karabakh and eastern Zangezur. As you can see on your screens, a large delegation on over 150 ambassadors, diplomats and military attaches representing 62 countries and international organizations is currently touring the region, accompanied by the assistant to the President of Azerbaijan, Hikmet Aliyev. The primary goal of this visit is to provide them them with a first-hand look at the large-scale reconstruction and development projects transforming these territories. The itinerary began with a deeply symbolic visit to Khojaly, where the delegates paid their respect at the memorial complex. Following, this group traveled to Khankendi to explore the newly established Victory Park, which stands as a symbol of the region's revival. As a key focal point of today's tour was Karabakh University. The guests were briefed on upcoming educational and socio-economic projects, toured the campus and visited the new medical clinic. This visit will continue tomorrow as the delegation heads toward the Shusha and Lachin districts to observe further progress. We will continue to follow the tour closely and bring you the updates as they happen. That's all for now. This is Leila Rahimli with Khalid Aliyev for AnewZ.
The President Cup 2026 International Regatta has concluded with great performances by young athletes from all around the world. Our Ilknur Seydamirova has more.
President Cup 2026 International Regatta, dedicated to the 103rd anniversary of Haydar Aliyev, has concluded. Azerbaijan finished the competition with a total of 9 medals, closing with a strong final day performance that brought 1 gold, 1 silver and 2 bronze medals. A standout moment came in the double kayak 200-meter race, where Tengiz Gagnidze and Gias Ahmedov, both born in 2008 and 2009, teamed up to win gold, marking one of the host nation's most impressive results.
Our federation supported us a lot. We were studying at the academy and they allowed us to come here to train. We had very good training sessions. Thanks to that, we have now achieved first place.
Georgia also delivered a strong performance, bringing home 2 trophies, winning another 200-meter race ahead of Ukraine and Lithuania, and adding gold in the 1,000-meter event. Uzbekistan stood out in the 1,500 meters, taking both first and second place and collected 2 gold medals on the final day. Turkey also performed confidently in the 1,000-meter races, earning 1 gold and 1 silver. Germany and Romania each secured a bronze medal, while the Czech Republic took silver in the 1,000-meter race. The competition brought together more than 100 athletes from April 27 to May 1st, showcasing young talent and strong international racing.
Astana is stepping up cooperation with Tokyo ahead of a major international summit. Kazakhstan's president has announced the start of preparations for the Central Asia-Japan meeting and outlined the latest developments in bilateral ties. Our correspondent Fariza Kalimurzina reports.
Astana is preparing to host the Central Asia-Japan summit in 2027. President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev said the preparations are already underway, speaking during a meeting with Yasutoshi Nishimura, head of the Japan-Kazakhstan Parliamentary Friendship League. According to Tokayev, the upcoming summit will build on the first meeting held in Tokyo in 2025, which expanded cooperation between Central Asian countries and Japan across key areas, including economic development and regional coordination. Astana now aims to turn those agreements into concrete projects. Japan remains one of Kazakhstan's key partners in Asia. Tokayev pointed to his official visit to Tokyo last year as a turning point in bilateral relations. The two sides signed a joint statement and approved 17 intergovernmental agreements in trade, digitalization, environmental protection and science. More than 60 commercial deals followed, valued at $3.7 billion. Separately, energy cooperation between the two countries has also been drawing attention in recent months. Japanese company INPEX is considering redirecting part of Kazakhstan's oil exports. The move comes as Japan looks to reduce risks linked to its heavy reliance on Middle Eastern supplies, which account for around 90% of its oil imports. INPEX, which holds a 7.56% stake in Kazakhstan's Kashagan oil field, could play a role in any potential shift. Fariza Kalimurzina, Almaty, AnewZ.
Meanwhile, Uzbekistan and Singapore are stepping up efforts to expand cooperation in trade, investment and economic development as officials from both countries highlight growing momentum in bilateral ties. Sevil Rajapova has more.
Uzbekistan and Singapore are moving to deepen cooperation in key economic sectors, following talks between Uzbekistan's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Bakhtiyor Saidov, and Singapore's Deputy Foreign Minister, Kevin Cheok. According to Saidov, the discussions focused on expanding collaboration in trade, investment and broader economic areas, with both sides noting strong and tough potential. He also welcomed the outcomes of a new round of political consultations held between the two countries' foreign ministers. Saidov expressed confidence that the agreements reached would contribute to further strengthening bilateral ties, signaling continued engagement at both diplomatic and economic levels. The partnership has shown steady growth in recent years. Over the past 7 years, trade between Uzbekistan and Singapore has more than doubled, while Singaporean investment in Uzbekistan have approached $1 billion. This upward trend reflects increasing interest from Singapore in Uzbekistan's market, particularly in areas such as finance, infrastructure and innovation. It is Sevil Rajab reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, AnewZ.
Now let's take a look at other major stories making the headlines today. For millions of Americans, the open road has long symbolized freedom. But as the country marks a century of U.S. Route 66, that freedom is coming at a far higher price, with rising fuel costs turning a summer tradition into a growing political and economic headache.
Motorists marking the 100-year anniversary of the iconic Route 66 in the U.S. are paying around $6 a gallon for petrol in California, the highest level in 2 years. The rise follows a major disruption to global oil supplies linked to the war with Iran, pushing fuel prices higher worldwide. California has been hit particularly hard. The state already records some of the highest petrol prices in the country, driven by strict emissions standards, high taxes, and a reliance on imported petroleum.
You can't stand for America and then make it impossible for people to actually enjoy the best parts of America. Route 66 is one of those things where it's like, you can go to a diner in Maine, or you can go to Japan, you can go anywhere, and people know what Route 66 is. It's one of those things where it's part of American history. And if people are scared because of astronomical gas prices, it's insane right now. It's like, how are they going to enjoy and experience this? You know, and it's a shame. It really is.
The primary election for governor will be held next month to narrow down the list of candidates. Those in the running are clashing over whether to eliminate the state's 61% per gallon gas tax, the highest in the nation. Governor Gavin Newsom said on Thursday that fuel prices have surged alongside broader cost increases, blaming the conflict and its economic impact. Nationally, the issue is expected to feature heavily in the run-up to November's midterm elections. Polls show most Americans hold the Trump administration responsible for the recent rise, and they expect it to get worse over the next year.
From cars to construction, aluminium is one of the metals modern industry cannot do without. But as tensions in the Gulf disrupt key supply routes, European manufacturers are facing a growing squeeze, and the cost of keeping factories running is climbing fast.
At this smelter in Austria, aluminium is melted, processed and shaped. It will be used across industries ranging from transport to construction. The raw material comes from the Gulf region, but the ongoing conflict over the Strait of Hormuz is threatening shipments to Europe. Rising energy costs to produce aluminium are also putting a squeeze on European manufacturers. As a result, the cost of semi-finished aluminium in Europe has doubled since the conflict began. The disruption comes at a difficult time for German manufacturers, who rely on it for automotive production, renewable energy, defense, and other strategic industries. Demand for aluminium is rising in Germany due to the processes or the transition, and supply may well decrease as a result of the events in the Strait of Hormuz. Consequently, we need to ensure that we obtain aluminium from other sources. This means we would actually have to increase imports or boost our own production. Increasing our own production is only possible to a limited extent because capacities in the primary sector in Europe are virtually exhausted. And in the secondary sector, that is, recycling, it is quite difficult to acquire the aluminium scrap required for this recycling production. European countries are limited in their ability to increase the supply on their own, with primary production capacity already stretched. Aluminium prices hit a 4-year high in mid-April. Within 2 weeks, they were 12% higher compared to February, when the U.S. and Israel launched their strikes on Iran.
At the FIFA Congress in Vancouver, Gianni Infantino moved to calm growing questions over Iran's place at the 2026 World Cup. He confirmed Iran will compete and will play its scheduled matches in the United States, despite the absence of its delegation at the Congress after reported difficulties entering Canada.
And let me start by the outset, or at the outset, I should say, confirming straight away for those who maybe want to say something else or want to write something else, that, of course, Iran will be participating at the FIFA World Cup 2026. And of course, Iran will play in the United States of America. And the reason for that is very simple, dear friends, is because we have to unite. We have to bring people together. It is my responsibility, it is our responsibility. Football unites the world, FIFA unites the world, you unite the world, we unite the world.
The war between Ukraine and Russia is increasingly becoming a battle over energy and endurance. As Kyiv steps up strikes on Russian oil infrastructure deep inside the country, Moscow is keeping pressure on Ukrainian cities, even as new talk of a possible pause in fighting begins to emerge.
Ukrainian forces have reportedly launched another attack on Russia's Tuapse oil refinery in the southern Krasnodar region. It marks the 4th reported strike on the Black Sea facility in the past 2 weeks, after earlier attacks on April 16th, 20th and 28th. Local authorities said a drone attack sparked a fire at the marine terminal, while residents reported explosions and air defense activity in the area. The refinery, located on Russia's Black Sea coast, processes around 12 million tons of oil a year. The Tuapse refinery was described by Kyiv as part of Russia's military and economic capacity, as it expands attacks on energy sites linked to Moscow's campaign. Ukraine has also confirmed a second consecutive drone strike on an oil station in Russia's Perm region, more than 1,500 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. Meanwhile, Russia has continued drone attacks on Ukrainian cities. Officials said strikes hit Odessa and Dnipro, damaging residential areas and leaving casualties on Thursday. Ukraine's Air Force said Russia launched 1 ballistic missile and 206 drones from Wednesday evening, with dozens of hits recorded across the country. The latest strikes come as Russia proposes a temporary pause in fighting around its May 9th Victory Day commemorations. President Volodymyr Zelensky says Ukraine wants to know whether Moscow is offering only security for a parade in Moscow or something more substantial. He says Kyiv is proposing a long-term ceasefire with reliable security for civilians and a path toward lasting peace.
4 days, 3 states, and a carefully choreographed display of transatlantic diplomacy. King Charles III has wrapped up his state visit to the United States, blending symbolism, politics, and public outreach at a time when both allies are navigating an increasingly uncertain global landscape.
Britain's King Charles III has wrapped up a 4-day state visit to the United States, marked by diplomacy, ceremony and public engagements across Washington, New York and Virginia. The trip concluded with a farewell at the White House, where the King and Queen Camilla met President Donald Trump and First Lady Melania Trump before departing Washington. The visit also carried a symbolic backdrop, coming as the United States prepares to mark the 250th anniversary of its independence. That theme featured throughout the programme, with references to shared history between the two countries during official events. In Virginia, the royal couple attended a community block party in Front Royal, where they watched a parade, met residents and joined brief public interactions. They also visited Arlington National Cemetery, laying a wreath and bouquet at the tomb of the unknown soldier during a formal military ceremony. Earlier in New York, the King and Queen began their programme with a solemn visit to the 9/11 memorial, marking the 25th anniversary of the attacks and meeting victims' families and first responders. The King also met business and tech leaders at a trade-focused engagement. The visit featured a state dinner hosted by President Trump and an address to the U.S. Congress, where the King highlighted shared democratic values and the importance of the UK-US relationship. It took place against a backdrop of wider global tensions, underscoring the diplomatic significance of the trip. Before leaving, the royal couple also made a stop in Virginia's Shenandoah National Park, rounding off a trip that blended ceremony, culture and diplomacy.
The alleged murder of a 5-year-old Indigenous girl in Alice Springs, Australia, has sparked anger, grief and violent unrest, exposing deep tensions between local communities and authorities.
Hundreds of protesters and Australian emergency services workers clashed in Alice Springs following the alleged murder of a 5-year-old Indigenous girl. Demonstrators gathered outside Alice Springs Hospital, where Jefferson Lewis, a 47-year-old man whom police allege killed the girl, was being treated after being found by locals and badly beaten. Lewis had recently been released from prison and was in the area at the time of the girl's disappearance. Protesters voiced anger that authorities had prevented them from carrying out mob justice on the suspect.
We are so angry for what he's done. He was an innocent little baby, so vulnerable, yet they're protecting him. For what he's done. Come on, let us have it.
I want to say this is really wrong, and we're all sad, we're all hurt, and it's like the feeling that they're protecting this guy and shooting us with rubber bullets and shooting us and all that. We're all over again. People got shot a couple years ago for this stuff, and it's like the system's not sticking up for us. And no.
The girl, now referred to by her family as Kumanjayi Little Baby, in line with Indigenous customs, was reported missing from her home in a remote community in central Australia on Saturday. She was found dead by one of hundreds of people searching the harsh desert terrain around the town, about 5 kilometres south of the original crime scene. Authorities call for peace following the violent clash.
I just call for calm across the community today. We've seen incredible support and cohesion across the Alice Springs community in the last 5 days, and people have stood shoulder to shoulder assisting the police in trying to bring a resolution to this matter. And I'd like to think that what we saw last night is an aberration, not a continuation of future behaviours that we're going to see today.
Officials say Lewis was later moved to the territory capital, Darwin, in the early hours of Friday morning for his own safety and is likely to be charged in the coming days.
Donald Trump has opened a new front in his criticism of Europe, accusing key NATO allies of failing the United States when support was needed. In blunt remarks, the U.S. president singled out Italy and Spain, while questioning Europe's role in Ukraine and reigniting debate over burden sharing inside the alliance.
Italy has not been of any help to us, and Spain has been horrible, absolutely horrible. You know, it's NATO. It's not even the fact that they're bad. It's one thing if they said nicely, or if they said, okay, we'll help, but the help's a little slow. But the level, and we helped them with Ukraine. When we needed them, they were not there. We have to remember that. And so if we ever have a big one, because we didn't need any help with Iran. We had Iran right from the first day it was over. It was over. And now it's even more so.
Tensions between Israel and Lebanon are rising again after fresh strikes in the south killed civilians, including children. With both sides accusing the other of escalation, fears are growing that last month's ceasefire may be starting to unravel.
At least 9 people, including 2 children, have been killed in Israeli strikes in southern Lebanon on Thursday. The strikes, which Israel said targeted Hezbollah infrastructure, came after the military warned residents of 8 Lebanese towns to leave their homes immediately. Hostilities between Israel and Iran-backed Hezbollah have continued despite a U.S. brokered ceasefire last month. Hezbollah said it also carried out attacks on Israeli forces in the south, including a drone strike targeting soldiers in the Bint Jbeil district. The fighting has led to the deaths of thousands of people in Lebanon, including more than 100 medics and 170 children. Relatives and friends gathered in the southern Lebanese city of Tyre to bid farewell to 3 rescuers killed after 2 Israeli strikes hit a building. Rescuers say they will continue their work despite the risks.
If we were scared, we wouldn't have volunteered in this institution. We have the honor of helping people. Our volunteers help people. We're not afraid. I've been injured several times and didn't get scared. I'm still carrying on as normal.
Our destiny will remain the same. Here they are, and we are walking with them. This is a path that won't stop.
Lebanese Prime Minister Nawaf Salam condemned the strikes as a new and blatant war crime committed by Israel. The United Nations Human Rights Office said earlier that Israeli airstrikes on civilians, including healthcare workers in Lebanon, may amount to war crimes. Lebanese officials say more than 2,500 people have been killed in Israeli strikes across Lebanon since March, when Hezbollah fired on Israeli positions, triggering a widespread Israeli air and ground campaign.
Well, that's our show. Thank you so much for watching, and from all of us here at AnewZ, have a nice evening.